Hi, this is Alex and we're going to be looking at the sketch and feature tips from Customer Day 2013. So we'll start with this sketch and I'll just go in and I'll edit it. And the first thing I want to do is generate a vertical constraint on this line. So I'll select the line, I'll add the vertical constraint and the sketch goes over defined. Now if I click on where it says over defined, I can launch a sketch expert, which allows me to diagnose any problems within the sketch. So you can see here that I've got two possible ways that this sketch can solve. I'm going to choose one of two. Okay, next up I want to use the jog tool to add some geometry to this sketch. So I'm going to come up to the command search in the top right hand corner of the screen and just type in jog. That launches the jog line, which you may be familiar with from the explode tool in assemblies. So we'll just launch the tool from there and I can simply just click on a line and jog it like so. Next up what we'll do is we'll just manipulate this sketch further. I'm just going to remove a relation and drag that out to give me what I want. We'll then add some dimensions. Okay, now I want to adjust my sketch here, and I'm not sure exactly by how much I want to adjust it. I want to have the freedom to sort of pull it around and have a look. So to do this, I'm going to first off show you a way using this tool, override dimensions on drag move. That will just allow me to select a vertex of a line and just start to pull it around even though it has been defined already. As we release it, any update dimensions that are referenced in that line will update to suit. We'll just undo that using Ctrl Z. The other way that I can do that, if we just actually go in and turn this off, is to use the stretch tool. So we'll find the stretch tool available on the drop down of move entities, and I can just select several lines that I want to move, and you can pull that about from a reference point, or alternatively you can do it using from two dimensions. So we'll just do that again. We'll use the XY values and you can see that I can just change that very easily from here. Okay, now next thing I want to do is just add a few fillets to this. So we'll launch our fillet tool, and as we're adding fillets, it is possible to window around your selections rather than selecting the vertex or the two lines. We'll exit sketch using the double click, and we'll extrude this using Instant 3D. So I'm going to click on the sketch, drag the arrow, and you can see I'm not getting the preview here. That indicates that there's something not correct with the sketch. So we're just going to go into the sketch and use a tool called check sketch for feature. We're going to check it for a boss extrude, and it tells me the sketch cannot be used for a feature because an endpoint is wrongly shared by multiple entities. To try and fix the sketch right now, click OK. So as I click OK, it launches this repair sketch tool and it highlights the area in the sketch with the problem. So you can see here that I've got a stray line that I'm just going to delete out. As we refresh our repair sketch, you can see it says no problems found. So I can exit the sketch, and we should now be able to extrude this without a problem. Okay, so we'll just drag that out to around about 40 mm using the ruler to snap to those increments. Next thing I'm going to do is add a couple of holes in. So we'll open up a sketch on that face, orientate ourselves normal to, and we'll add in a center line. Okay, now I want the center line to sit equally between those two edges. So you've probably come across the symmetric command before, but perhaps not when referencing model geometry. So I'm going to select the center line, I'm going to select the two edges, add a symmetric relation, and you can see that's now constrained centrally between those two edges. Now going to add in a circle, so we'll grab hold of our circle tool and as you are creating a circle, if you hold the shift key, you can snap to various increments, and you can set these increments up yourself. That used with the add dimension tools is fairly powerful. Now I'm just going to place this sort of down randomly, and we're going to go ahead and dimension it. Within the modify box of the dimension, we're currently working in millimeters, but if you want to switch between metric and imperial on the fly, you can just type in the unit system after the dimension. So I've just typed in 1/4 inch there, and you can see live it converts it to metric. Also within the modified box, you have this scroll wheel here, which is set to increment up in increments of 10 on my machine. Now if you hold Control, you will multiply those increments by 10. If you hold Alt, you will divide those by 10. Okay, to copy one of those circles to the other side of the center line, we can actually Control drag that. And to constrain it, I'm going to add a symmetric relation between two circles in the center line, like so. We'll now add a couple of dimensions to constrain this. So the first dimension I'm going to add is a point-to-point dimension between the centers. Now you'll notice that as I add that dimension, my cursor shows up with a mouse symbol next to it with the right mouse button highlighted. This allows me to lock the focus of the dimension. So if I want it aligned, I can just set it to where it's in the aligned position, right click, and it locks it in that orientation. We'll set that to 15, and we'll just finish off by dimensioning from the top edge at 20. We'll then exit sketch, rotate that around, and again using Instant 3D we can pull those circles up as a boss, or we can pull them down as a cut. If you hold the Alt key while you're using Instant 3D, you can infer end conditions. So you can see here I'm snapping up to vertex there. Okay, down the bottom here I'm going to do a full round fillet. So you'll find full round fillet in your manual section of the fillet tool down the bottom here. And it just requires you to pick 3 faces. Now within the full round fillet command we need to select 3 faces, and I'll just go ahead and do this from the graphics area. Now in order to switch boxes you can actually do that just using the right mouse button, and you'll move down to the next selection box. Just makes selecting a little bit easier. Okay, now on this face I'm going to do some further sketching using the offset entities command. So I'm going to select this edge first, go to offset entities, and I'm going to set the value to, let's say, 4mm, and I'm going to send that inside like so. Now to relaunch that command I can just hit the enter key. That just selects your previous command and launches it for you. Okay, a different value for the arc at the bottom. Now what I want to do is extend the vertical lines up to meet the arc, and then trim away the excess. So we can do this all from the power trim tool. Just launch power trim, and to extend while you're using power trim, just hold the shift key down and the sketch geometry will just extend to the next thing it hits. With the same tool on, we can then just release shift and trim away the excess here. I then want to just drag this end down and add a line, and we'll make that vertical like so. We'll then exit the sketch, and again using Instant 3D we'll just drag that down as a cut, and we'll say that's, let's say, 6mm. Okay, next up what we want to do is we want to produce a similar sketch on the other side. Maybe we want to cut using that sketch but to a different depth. So the way we're going to do that is just open up the sketch here, and we can right click on the edge of the cut, we can select the loop, choose the appropriate loop, and then just convert that onto the sketch plane like so. If we just undo that, The other way to do that is to use convert entities selecting a face. Now when you select a face and do convert entities, what that will do is it will copy every outer edge on that face and convert it to sketch geometry. If you want any internal detail, you select the face and the edge of a loop that you want to copy. Convert entities, and you can see it does the internals group there. If you wish to exit a sketch without keeping the changes, you can just hit the red cross button and you can see that sketch actually disappears. Now the reason that I've done that is because I'm going to actually mirror that cross, but I need a midplane to mirror it about. So I'll just select the two surfaces like so. I'll go into my plane tool and you can see that automatically creates a midplane for me. From there, what we'll do is we'll go to our mirror command, we'll select the feature and just right click to OK that, so we have the feature now on both sides. However, as I said, I want the one on the underside to be a different depth. So how can I achieve that? We have some face commands here, one of which is called move face. That will just allow me to select a face and offset by a specific distance, and currently it's going the wrong way. I want it to go inside, so we can just flip direction like so to send it inside, and maybe we'll set that to 3 millimeters. Okay, now the move command is done, we can select that face and we can move it to wherever we want. We can even move it out to be a boss, like so. Also using the move face command, I'm just going to translate the arced face out to produce a cut like so. Okay, now going back to the top, what I want to do is add some fillets in, and I want to fillet all the edges of that feature. So I go into my fillet command, and rather than selecting all the edges, what I can actually do here is just define my size, let's say 1 millimeter, and I can right click on the face of that and I can select the feature, and it actually selects the appropriate feature for me in the tree. If we look at the other side, we're going to do a little bit of work in here. I'll perhaps turn off ambient occlusion to make it a bit clearer. Okay, so we're going to add some fillets, and we're going to add some fillets to a loop. So right click on an edge, select a loop, it does our first loop there, and also to a face. We'll press the OK button, and basically those fillets can't all solve within the same command, so they have to be separated. We can use a tool called Feature Expert to separate those fillets out, like so. And you can see that that was now constructed in 2 operations rather than 1. Also in the fillet tool we have something called Fillet Expert. Now that will allow you to add fillets, and just apply that like so. Now if we look at the geometry, I'm not entirely happy with the blend that we get in this region here and here. The reason we get that blend is based on the order that the fillets are done. If you don't want to reorder your fillets, you can try using this corner tool. If we select a corner face where different size fillets are meeting at a common junction point, you can select that and you can show alternative blends there. If you're happy with one of the blends, you can just select it and you can see it changes the blend in that region. You can also take what you've done there and just copy it to a different region like so. The corner blend actually puts a fillet corner feature in the tree for you to reference. The last little tip here is just the ability to right click and roll back to any stage in the tree, and it is also possible, if you want to get a decent idea of how the part was constructed, to use the arrow keys just to cycle through all your features like so. We'll now switch to Ed.
Thanks, Alex. We're going to take a look at some assembly tips first and foremost here. So the first one is the S key works in the assembly, so we can go here and insert some components. I'm going to grab hold of this wire assembly. That's actually been set up with a SmartMate, and you'll see that snaps perfectly into position. On placing that down, this has also been configured and created with a configuration publisher, so we can select from the left hand side here which variant of that we actually want to include. So I'm going to go ahead and place that large one in. The next tip is using feature-driven component patterns. So this is a really nice feature that just allows us to leverage any features that have been, or any patterns that have been created at component level, and then reuse those to allow us to place components via the same pattern. Next there, if you hold down your middle mouse button when you're over a face, you can use that to rotate. And we'll just go ahead and we'll populate the other wire clip on the opposing side of this design. But this time we're going to select the small version. So you'll see that configuration publisher is quite handy. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is if we open a part here. So we've got some quick filters which you've already seen previously, but we're just going to open a part here, and I want to position this into my assembly. If you just minimize the window for these parts, you can always minimize the feature tree as well. One thing that's quite nice is we can actually grab hold of a reference edge here and drag and drop that into the assembly, and you'll see that will also SmartMate into position with no setup from ourselves. So again, that's quite a nice thing that we can do there that's automatic. Okay, we're going to leave this assembly alone, and we'll use Control Tab to switch through to another one. So we've got a sort of part assembled section here that we want to do. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to choose the Mate command, and we're going to toggle on the multi-mate mode. And this just allows us to make things very, very quickly. So here we need to select the common reference, which for us is the shaft, and then we can choose to select any cylindrical faces then, and that will go ahead and it will mate everything into position, and a right click will just OK that. The next thing we're going to do is turn multi-mate mode off and use the G key to help us select faces here for mating. So you'll see that can be really, really helpful. We'll just move these two components out of the way a little bit here. It can be really helpful for you to select very, very small geometry that you can't necessarily see, and just saves us from zooming in. And you'll see that helps us quite a lot here in that situation. The next thing I want to do is I want to mate some of these faces to a face that I can't actually see, so I can use Select Other here and then click on the graphics area. And if we do the same over on this side here, so we want to mate that face to another one here, you'll see we can actually use the selection here, or alternatively grab it from the window, and that gives us our mates. The next thing we're going to do is position this screw. So again, we can use the G key here just to help us. Grab hold of that, and we're going to apply a tangent. We're going to apply a tangent mate between those two, which is the default, which will position that screw for us. Okay, so that's us finished on mating. The next thing we want to do is we want multiple instances of that screw component. So if we choose the S key again, we've got a tool called Copy with Mates, which we can use. We can select the component. It will detect the mates that are included with that component, and all we need to do is click the two faces that relate to those. A right click will repeat the command for us here, and a right click again, and then we can exit the command, and we've positioned 3 of our fasteners very, very quickly. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is I want to make a sub-assembly out of those two components. I can do it by control selecting them and forming a new sub-assembly. Just need to select my template there. We'll do the same with these next two here. And we'll do the same with the final 2 over on this end as well. So that can be a really quick way to structure your assemblies if you need to. The next thing I want to do is with respect to exploded views. So we're going to add in an exploded view here, and I'm going to Windows select everything, and using Control and Select I can deselect the shaft. And just down the bottom here I'm going to turn on Auto Space Components After Drag. So what that's going to allow me to do is automatically space all those components really nicely for me. I've also toggled off select sub-assemblies parts here because I want the screws to remain with their sub-assembly. The next thing I want to do is toggle off auto space components after drag and turn on select sub-assemblies parts. And again here we can use the G key to grab hold of those screws, and we're going to add a separate explode in for those three like so. Okay, so we'll just accept that and we've now got our exploded view. Also, what's quite nice, on a right click, if you're in an exploded view, you can collapse it very quickly. NF will zoom to fit there just to bring that into the main screen. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is go into motion study and use the wizard. Within here you can select any existing explodes that you have. We can specify a time for those and click finish, and that will automatically create an exploded view for us, which is really nice and helpful. So if we just zoom out here to see what's going on and just play that again, you'll see one thing that you'll notice is that the screws all come out together. Ideally, I want those to come out one by one, and you'll see just down the bottom here we have key frames or key points for each of those screws. What I'm going to do is I'm going to resize the time bar, drag the overall time to the end, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to position each of these screws. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag the time bar for each of these along a little bit so they're staggered. So you'll see this is really easy to do. And then the next thing I'm going to do is drag the start time for each of these again to start overlapping each other. And then if we play that animation back, you'll see that each of those screws now comes out one after the other. Okay. So if we go back to the model now, one of the other things that I want to do is show you a little bit about what you can do with assembly features. So here I'm just going to make myself normal to that face, and I'm going to start a sketch on there and draw just a rectangle because I want to create a cutaway view. So in assembly we can use an assembly feature. We can use that to go through all here. We can also use it to grab all components or selected components. I actually want to window every component here and then deselect the shaft. So again, using our control select, we can also leave out the fasteners within there as well. And if we don't propagate the feature to the part, that will only exist at assembly level. So if we have that now, we now get a nice sort of assembly cutaway view. If I go back to my assembly tree, I can right click on this feature and configure it. And what I can do here is create a new configuration on the fly called cutaway and suppress the original feature in our main configuration. And that'll just store that as a separate configuration for us for when we go through to the drawing. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to go through to drawing level and take a look at some drawing tips. So firstly, I'm just going to make a drawing here, and we'll come through over to this end. So the first thing I want to do is drag on the isometric explode view. I can drag that straight onto the sheet. It's created automatically for us now. And a nice thing here that we can do is use the 3D rotate functionality to rotate our exploded view into a different orientation that we may find better to fit onto the sheet. Here we go. So we can place that onto the sheet nicely, which is really useful. The next thing I'm going to do is insert a bill of materials. So nothing complicated about this. We'll just place that down and position that somewhere on our drawing. There's a couple of nice things that happen in a bill of materials. One thing here is the size of the table, so the text is actually driven by the template that you're using, but we can override that by choosing this box here and selecting a different size if we want to. We can then resize the box to suit. One of the other things we can do from this top menu is invoke the heading. We can flip the header column from the top to the bottom. We can also click this little button here, which will give us a sort of title for the table. Over on the right hand side here, if we expand this command out, you'll see we get thumbnail previews for each of the parts. This can be really helpful if you're working on completely separate sheets to your bill of materials. You can see exactly which part relates to what. Another tip that not a lot of people know is this is actually dynamically cross-highlightable as well. So if you select components from here or from the actual view itself, they highlight in the bill of materials. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add on some balloons here. So we'll just use our auto balloon facility, and I'm just going to choose a particular orientation for those and just add those on. I'm then going to just use the magnet line that's created and reposition those down here like so. So we'll just get those sorted. I'm just going to change that to an equals as well. This balloon I actually want to drag off, because this is something else that I'm going to talk about in a moment. If I actually delete that balloon off and we look back at the bill of materials, you'll see each item that has a balloon assigned to it now has a balloon symbol, aside from the one we've deleted. So that's a really nice check if you do want to make sure that all your items are ballooned in a particular drawing view. We'll go ahead and we'll add on a manual balloon for this item here, like so. And another thing that you can do is control drag leader lines out onto additional components, like so. So we could drag that onto all three of those. So we've now got 3 leaders pointing at each of those components. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to add a new sheet, and we're just going to continue with some more drawing views. So I'm just going to drag out a front view here, just use the automatic project facility to project those two up. The isometric view I'm actually going to grab from here and place that down. And one of the things that I can do here is change that to that cutaway configuration that we created earlier and put that into a coloured view in the top corner. Those things can be quite effective when you're trying to communicate what's going on. Another tip here is that if you hold down Shift and grab one of the drawing views, you can drag them all together, which is quite nice for repositioning those over in different locations. We'll just create a section view for this view here, so we'll place that down using the new section view tool. We can toggle on or off exclude fasteners here, which is quite nice, and we'll just place that section view up at the top. One of the things we can do with section views, you'll see it cross hatches automatically, but we can actually double click in the crosshatch area and toggle off material crosshatch and change it to a particular style that we may want to use. So I'm going to have dashed lines. I'm just going to up the scale there and put that at 45 degrees just so we can see what's going on. And you can also specify where it applies it to. So is it the component, the region, the body, the view? You've got a nice lot of control over what you do with the cross-hatching there. One of the other things we can do is if we drag any note over the top of cross-hatching, it will automatically halo around that for us as well. So I'm just going to add a couple of dimensions on here, like so. So we'll just position that one down there, and I want one between there and there, which will position like so. And then I'm going to put a detail view just in this area here as well, and we'll place that down over there. Now sometimes you may want to display those dimensions on your main view actually in your detail view. What we can do is hold down Shift and drag them into the new view like so. So you'll see they move across. So we'll just drag this one over as well, like so. Now with this almost 10mm dimension here, it's actually dimensioning out of this view. So a nice thing that we can do is hide the extension line. We can also choose to hide the dimension line here just by right clicking on those dimensions. If we Windows select these two and invoke this little box, we can use the auto arrange button here to actually get those to auto arrange. You'll see it's nicely positioned those next to each other, and if we move those around, you'll see they move nicely together. If you do want to break that alignment, you can just come back out of that as well if you want to. And finally here, this view looks a little out of place, so we're just going to use the alignment option here to align it vertically by the origin. So if we do that with this detail view, for example, you'll see it shoots to its position relative to the origin. It's not really what we want in this situation, so we can use the alternative option, which is to align vertical by center, and then click the view, and you'll see that puts it in a much better alignment. Thank you very much for watching.